Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today to our local emergency planning committee. So we are going to start with the chief. Do you have any remark or introduction? Yesterday, I reached out to Karis and Shane, and today I will hear back from them. Yeah, maybe we are going to have a meeting, maybe through Teams around 3 o'clock. Yeah. Tim, do you have any? Good. Okay. So now let's begin with our agenda. So the first thing we have the MEMA updates. So Heather, could you please provide us the MEMA update? Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Don't have too much today. I just actually was looking around on the internet and a few of my folks that were texting me, and there's an interesting event actually going on at the MEMA bunker today. It's Mass 211 Day, even though today is 2/12. I guess technically they would have celebrated yesterday, but where it was a Sunday, they're going to celebrate it today. And it's actually all about the 211 program here in Massachusetts. And it's just celebrating and thanking those folks. I was just doing a little bit of research myself, just trying to figure out exactly what it's all about. But the 211 program, it's just a way to connect, people in the community with essential resources. It's run by the United Way. And at least from a MEMA perspective, we work with them very closely, especially when it comes to times when maybe warming centers or cooling centers or shelters need to be opened. They can actually access the information that the cities and towns are entering into WebEOC about those shelters being opened. And that way, anybody that's across basically the Commonwealth, they call 211, they can get that information. So it's direct from us. So it's just kind of a nice little way that shows what you people input, or whoever inputs into WebEOC, it comes through us. And then people in the community through 211 are getting it. And those of you not familiar with 211, they also just provide a lot of information, mental health resources, just a way to connect families with different, types of things. Rent and mortgage assistance, childcare, healthcare, all those different types of things. They're a 24-hour service. So I thought that was pretty cool. They're having folks at the bunker at 11 o'clock today, and they're doing a little Facebook Live thing. So if anybody has nothing else going on at 11 and you want to hop on Facebook and see what that's all about, I might actually do that myself. So just wanted to share that. We're getting ready for tomorrow, whatever that may actually end up looking like. I know there's a weather call later on this afternoon at 2, so hopefully we'll get a lot more good information there. Our next quarterly EMD meeting is going to be on March 19th in our Franklin office from 9 to 12. It's going to be actually a hybrid meeting, so folks that can't make it are also going to be online. Trying to see what else we have that might be of interest to you guys. We will be having our next SERC, the State Emergency Response Commission's meeting, also in March. They're still working towards trying to get things sort of back up and running and really moving forward in a positive way. We've had a lot of turnover in that area, so we're trying to sort of get things to start being more cohesive and getting some good messaging out to all of the LEPCs in the area. And really, then, as always, just like to mention all the different trainings that are coming up. We have an emergency management director's sort of orientation program class that we do. That's at the end of February in Franklin. And actually, I think you would sign up for that class. So that's fantastic. It's just like a nice, great overview of all things that an EMD should know in the position. And as always, TRS is the place that you could go to look for any of those classes. And Googling MEMA TRS will get you to that website. You can sign up for a login. All the training is free, so it's definitely something worth taking advantage of. If you see something, feel free to sign up, and if you can't get into it, you can always try to get a hold of me, and I might be able to get you into it if it's full. No promises, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have for today, unless anybody has any questions. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
For the next, we are going to talk about the emergency management update and Eversource energy presentation will be the last because we have another presenter. He's in his way. So for the emergency management update, I am going to highlight one key project. So we receive a notice to process on our grant. So we are going to from MEMA. So we are going to use that grant to hire a vendor. So right now I have been writing a request vendor, and we are going to use that grant to the vendor will go, he or she going to help us to development emergency operations center function exercise for our team here. So this is the key project right now. And if you have any question regarding the other projects, feel free to ask any feedback or. Yeah, the storm ready certification. It's through National Weather Services. It's a voluntarily program. It's help communities like to go through preparation. It's a three pages application. The first section, it's basic information about the town, the OC. The second one about the coordination between National Weather Services and the town. The third section about our planning, what we have. So we have the same, but we are going to work on the weather plan. The last section, it's about preparedness, the community preparedness, like to have events for our community, talking about the weathers, how we respond to that. So this is the basic. And yeah. Yeah, the benefit, the first benefit is it's getting discount through FEMA for flood insurance, which is great. The second benefit, it's like to give us like a situation awareness about our plan, what we have, what we should work on, update, and we already have RAVE for emergency alert. Now we sign up for the National Weather Services, which is another way to receive alert, but from the National Weather Service. So those, yeah. Any other questions or feedback? Okay, great. So we are going to presentation. So yeah, we have with us today, we are, yes.
I just want to get set up. I'm Peter Bowman from Eversource Community Relations, and Peter DiMatteo from our ERP team with us today. So worked with the chief a lot over the last year or so, and so we just out talking about our emergency response plans, and it's timely based on the weather that's coming in tomorrow. So we're actively beginning our planning, well, starting yesterday. So. And Peter is a retired police chief from the town of Dennis and works with us here at Eversource. So I'll turn it over to Peter. We might have another gentleman coming in who's running a little bit late, but if not, Peter will run through the whole presentation.
Yeah.
Good morning. This is Pete. My name is Pete DiMatteo, member of the Community Relations Emergency Response Readiness Team. Regarding our emergency response readiness team, my manager, Sean Lozier, he works out of the Southborough office. Another member of our team, Francesca Lucia, she works out of the Connecticut, in Hartford, Connecticut office, and I typically work out of the Yarmouth Area Work Center. Just going to give a quick overview of emergency preparedness for Eversource. So today's agenda, we're just going to discuss liaison organization and community relations, electric operations, emergency event coordination, Eversource's municipal hub, and answer any questions that you may have. So community relations during Blue Sky Days, Eversource Community Relations serves as a primary point of contact, which is you folks, is Peter Bowman, for local government officials, business leaders, key stakeholders. We partner with the community priorities, leverage the full benefit of Eversource's operational safety and advocacy experience to support the needs of the town leaders, constituents, and communities. Community relations team responds to inquiries for community officials, to engage in-house experts to resolve municipal concerns, facilitating collaboration between Eversource departments, community partners, provides information and regular updates on energy-related projects occurring in communities to state, local, and business officials. So during Blue Sky Days, you typically be working with Peter Bowman. During emergency events, which we'll get into a couple of slides, you may be dealing with specifically a liaison that's actually assigned to the town for the appropriate type of a storm event. Incident command structure, just like you folks, we utilize ICS. We have an incident commander, Waniari. And in that incident command, you'll see liaison officer. That's folks that we report up to, that you folks will be working with as well through the community relations liaisons, as well as community relations specialists. The liaison organizational structure, again, liaison officers is our top form. They'll utilize and work with unit leaders, who are typically your community relations specialists. Unit leaders work with the community liaisons. Community liaisons, everybody at Eversource has a storm role. For some folks, that storm role is their same everyday job, like for line crews, tree crews, during an ERP event, they're doing the same type of position. But during a storm event, your community liaisons could be somebody in metering, it could be somebody in regulatory, it could be various departments. Everyone is assigned a storm role during an ERP event. So during large events, say for example, we're preparing right now for a potential event, obviously tomorrow. It's like a snow and wind event. So we may be activating the liaison organization. We'll get more information on that this afternoon, and you'll receive those updates through your community relations specialist, Peter Bowman. But when we utilize those community liaisons, they basically your point of contact for any emergency needs that come through to Eversource from you folks. We typically work with, the police chief or fire chief, the EMD of a community, whoever has been assigned as a single point of contact. And then the community liaison basically is the advocate for the municipal single point of contact. Again, the chiefs, the EMDs for a particular town. They're basically there to support you, to get you the information that you need, to work with you for your priorities in town, whether it be a critical facilities that's out, whether it be a main road, whether it be a main roadway, let's say, for example, some trees come down, take some lines down, the road's completely blocked, that could become a priority. It could be something that's not listed as a critical facility in the municipal hub, which we'll get to in a few slides. But let's say, for example, that you usually use a particular school as a shelter, a warming shelter in the wintertime when folks lose power. Let's say something happens to that building. You have to utilize some other building, so maybe a senior center is going to be used as a community priority for that warming shelter. You'd work with your community relations specialist or liaison if they're assigned to an ERP event to make that a priority for your particular town. The liaison organization during the ERP events. Eversource activates its community liaison organization during emergency events, such as possibly tomorrow. Some of the responsibilities, this is a short list, as many others, conducting proactive outreach to establish clear and open communication channels with each municipality in advance, during, and at the demobilization of an emergency event. So basically, prior to an emergency event starting, you get an email, let's say liaisons assigned to your particular community. You'll be receiving an email, a text, or even a phone call, whatever your choice is. Just introducing themselves, letting you folks know that they are the point of contact for that particular storm. And then from there going forward, that community relations specialist or liaison, if they're assigned for a particular emergency event, they look to you to see how you want your updates. Do you want to receive updates by the phone? Would you like to get text messages? Some folks just want to have emails, and they work with you during and through the entire event. They advocate for you, again, escalating community priorities, and they provide updates during the event, including timely information on the FPS calls, which again, those are roadblocks, wire down calls, critical facilities that are out, crew locations, how many crews are working in town, and any life support customer information that you need. What's a critical facility? The building a structure with a loss of electrical service would result in the disruption of a critical public safety or life-sustaining function. It is the responsibility of the owners of each critical facility to maintain sufficient backup, typically generation. Typically that's, backup generators, whether it's natural gas, could be propane, could be diesel. Critical facilities will be restored based on Eversource's emergency response plan restoration philosophy, which we'll get into in a few slides. Just some of the examples of critical facilities: acute care hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, 911 dispatch centers, police and fire stations, emergency operations centers, water pumping and sewer treatment stations, local facilities that serve as emergency shelters or warming centers. It also could be a facility that's utilized as a cooling center in the summertime during some of the heat waves that we have. It could also be a communication tower if that communication tower is needed for you folks to be able to communicate emergency response personnel. Submitting critical facility requests. For electrical critical facility requests, critical facilities must be submitted via the Eversource Municipal Hub, by the designated single point of contact. All critical facilities will be reviewed by the Blue Sky specialist. In this case is Peter Bowman. He along with the liaison officer, review those critical facility requests. And if they get approved, they'll typically populate in the municipal hub within no longer than 2 weeks. For some reason, something's not approved as a critical facility, the community relations specialist would then reach out to you, let you know why. Doesn't happen too often, but every now and then something will get put in that's not technically a critical facility. For gas critical facility requests, forms are provided by and must be submitted to your community relations specialists. All submitted, again, critical facilities for gas are reviewed by your Blue Sky community relations specialist, Peter Bowman, as well as liaison office for approval. And the average time it takes to get into the system is about 2 weeks. Community priorities. On the electric side, your single point of contact will have the opportunity to provide Eversource with up to 3 community priorities per ERP event. That's per day. Community priority requests should be submitted through the municipal hub. With that said, besides entering those through the municipal hub, our suggestion is also to reach out to community relations specialists doing Blue Sky events, or if it's a liaison assigned to you, you should also reach out to the liaison just to let them know you have put a priority as a request for your particular community. That way they can begin to work on it immediately. And then community liaisons will provide updates regarding the 3 community priorities throughout the day. Just some examples again of community priorities could be critical facilities that are out, major municipal roadways that are blocked. We understand that sometimes a main roadway that's blocked could prevent police, fire, EMS personnel from going to and from particular locations. That might be the main route to your medical facility, whatnot. We understand that that's a priority for you. Again, you'd work with the liaison to escalate those type of communities priorities. Regarding gas, the single point of contact in the communities affected by a gas event will have the opportunity to identify community priority requests during a particular event. Community relations will work with a single point of contact during the gas event. Community relations will provide updates on the status of community priority gas events, as well as updates on the repair and restoration efforts throughout that particular event. Some examples of gas-related community priorities include water pumping stations that require natural gas to power equipment that purifies water. Could be that particular location. Life support customers. Life support customers are defined as those residential customers who have provided documentation certifying a medical condition that necessitates electrical utility service. Prior to predicted emergency events and during restoration stage, Eversource may conduct automated outbound telephone calls to each life support customer. The telephone messages are customized for each event and contain information about the event and Eversource preparations, information about the potential power outages, and recommended personal proactive actions. During ERP activation, community liaisons monitor internal reports for life support customers who may be impacted by the outages. Community liaisons will call life support customers that are without power. If a community liaison cannot be reached, the liaison will notify the municipal single point of contact and provide a physical address of the life support customer. So prior to actual events, life support customers get entered into our municipal hub, working with their physician. The physician basically sends documentation to a specified address at Eversource that stays in our system for up to 1 year. So after 1 year, that person has to reapply through their physician. So prior to an actual ERP event, they would receive a recorded message just letting them know that Eversource is monitoring a particular storm system, maybe power outages, and maybe extended period of time. Now's the time to prepare, whether it's making sure the generator works, making sure that they maybe have an alternative location to go to. And then during the actual outage, if someone does lose power, liaisons have access to see what life support customers are out of power within a particular community. They can do proactive outreach, give them a call, see how they're doing. If they cannot get in touch with them or they have any concerns about when they're speaking with them, they'd reach out to the single point of contact, again, police chief, fire chief, EMD, letting them know that they spoke to a life support customer, give them the address, and either they were unable to get in touch with them or they had concerns about them. And then it's up to the single point of contact if they want to do a well-being. I'd say the majority of the time, well-being checks done by the communities. Erie's just going to quickly cover electric operations, emergency event coordination, and I'll follow up with information about the municipal hub.
A little bit late. 3-year-old have preschool, and preschool starts at 9, so that's the way it works. That is the only thing that doesn't stop in this world. They have to get the preschool on. So as I was introduced here, electric operations and emergency event. I'm a senior specialist in the emergency preparedness division. Before that, I worked with Tim in our health and medical coordinating coalition. So kind of full circle here today. So what I'm going to talk about are a few different things that we do on the emergency preparedness side to ensure that our company is ready to respond to and recover from any type of disaster. And we're going to start first with our ERP declaration table. Fire department in the house? Okay, perfect. So I'm also a firefighter and an EMT. So for the police officers in the room, I apologize if I use a lot of references to that. It's just the only thing that I know. And so unfortunately, that's what you have to deal with. But this is kind of like our run card. So the larger the incident, the more resources we have to bring onto our system in order to rectify the situation. So we're looking at this. Level 5 is actually our lowest level operation. This is just our normal day-to-day system status. You know, today is a level 5 day. Nothing really going on. We may have less than 1% of customers out at peak. And there are some storms that come through every now and again that you might get some breezy gusts coming through and you have some, you know, isolated outages here and there across the state. We still stay at about a level 5. Now, for tomorrow, we're probably going to be somewhere in this range. And as I say that, God knows what it's going to be. Knock on wood, we don't have to go further. But a 4 is usually our next step here. And a storm like tomorrow might be pretty consistent with that. So we call this upgraded normal operations. The reason why is when we get to a level 4, we can start bringing outside contractors onto the system to start helping us out. So this is all internal resources. Now we can start hiring outside crews. So this usually is about 14,000, 70,000 customers, about 1 to 5% of our customers out. It takes us approximately 24 to 48 hours to complete restoration activities. And we estimate 100 to 1,800 trouble spots. Does anybody know what a trouble spot is? Before I No, okay, that's great. Usually people don't, and that's fine. I didn't know what it was for a long time. So a trouble spot could be a transformer outside. It could be a recloser that isn't reclosing. It could be any one of those little devices that you see on the tops of the poles that keep the energy moving. So if any of those items is out, it's called a trouble spot. And when you say 1800, you're probably thinking, oh my God, that's a lot. We can actually restore most of our customers in the blink of an eye, and they wouldn't know it. They'd see it as a brownout. So a lot of the customers you see on these, large numbers, these brownouts, they may say 50,000 customers out. It's in the blink of an eye. So we see those numbers. You'll never see those numbers most likely. But all that means is that we were able to actually do this virtually. So we have a team of people sitting in a big building in Boston. I liken it to NASA's Mission Control Center with these floor-to-ceiling monitors like this. And basically, they will sit there, and sometimes the computer does it, sometimes the operator will do it. They'll actually reclose the system automatically sitting at their desk, and they never have to send a lineman out. Pretty amazing how that works. So when we're talking about trouble spots, those are those individual devices, and a lot of times we're able to do a lot of the restoration work remotely. When we're getting into a level 3, now we're talking a real event here. This is a moderate, what we call a moderate regional event. In a level 3, we're typically looking at damage in a specific region that is consistent with 5 to 10% of our customers out. Now that could expand out. We could, like the January storm we had, or December 18, everybody remembers that one. We had a lot of downed trees, a lot of blocked roads. That was a type 3 event. We had a large number of customers out, and it took us about somewhere in the range of 48 to 72 hours to clean everything up. We did have quite a number of trouble spots. So it was around this range again, so it was pretty accurate. And it required us to bring over 200 external crews onto the system in addition to our internal resources. So when I talk about this being like a run card, we're calling around. We have our standard contractors who will come onto the system, and we also bring crews down from places as far away as Canada. So I see MEMA in the back of the room. We send a nice little letter over to MEMA. They kick it back to us. We then send it over to Customs and Border Patrol. We make sure all those crews come through. So I've only been with Eversource just shy of 3 years now, and within my first 6 months, I hit a type 2 event. That was that October event that just never seemed to end. It was like a week long. And we had somewhere in the range of 120, 150,000 outages I may be off on that slightly. We had a lot of outages on that event. This took a long time. It actually ended up being 2 events that were stacked on each other. So we had the major wind event at the beginning of the week, and then we had some follow-up over the weekend. So this took us about 7 days to do restoration entirely, right? 2 separate events, but the whole thing took 7 days. That was a type 2 event. Type 1, let's just hope we don't have to get to this, right? But this is a catastrophic event. This could be multiple weeks. We've actually been part of type 1's events. So we've actually sent crews down to places like Louisiana, and we did multi-week restorations. My coworker went down as part of the emergency preparedness contingent to Louisiana during one of the more recent hurricanes a couple of years ago. And he was down there for almost a month. So events like this, while very, very rare, can absolutely happen. And as climate change is continuing to do its thing, we may unfortunately end up seeing some of these events happen more frequently. But the idea here to understand is, depending on the size of the incident and the scope of the incident, we have specific amounts of time that we have to achieve restoration. And we have a certain number of trouble spots that we match up in order to make the decision as to which event type we're going to. And our incident commander is the one who makes the final decision. So in 30 minutes from now, I will have a decision as to whether we're going to a type 4 or type 3 event. Not for Eversource, not that I'm aware of. We've had 2 type 2s that I can think of. There was a ice storm several years back. I believe there was a 2018 event that may have reached type 2, although it might have been, that was like a series of snowstorms. As far as this goes, I have yet to see one on the record. Yeah.
Like, what's the spread like now for these? Is it like, oh, we're seeing a level 4 every month at least? Like, I'm just curious what that breakdown looks like now.
Well, if you ask my wife, it's about every week.
Yeah.
So basically the way this spreads out, that's an excellent question. Type 5s are an almost weekly thing during the winter. And I say that it's barely a blip on the radar. I know about them because, typically there's conversations about hiring crews. Occasionally it reaches a certain threshold financially, and then we go to cost recovery, and then I really find out about it because I have to write the report about it. But we do these pretty frequently. These are a regular operation, right? Your wind events during the summertime, you might have some more severe weather, but it's pretty isolated. Type 4s, we see anywhere from 1 to 2 a month during the winter time. So our big hit months are usually hurricane season from July until pretty much the beginning of November, where it's kind of hit or miss. We could be doing a lot of work, we might not. With the heat events have actually been a killer for us. We've had a number of level 4s that have just been because of the heat. Lots of customers out because the systems are stressed. Great example of this was the underground a couple Julys ago in Boston. A lot of heating, a lot of overheating in those systems, a lot of pressure on the system because there were so many window air conditioning units going on at the same time that we're actually drawing more from the system than it could handle. So there is that element of it, but there's also, if we go take a really big step back, how do we get our energy into the system? You have your generation station, which Eversource does not have any control over. That is a system that's completely separate. They pump the energy in. There is a group called ISO New England. They kind of monitor that whole system. Eversource has people who sit on the 3rd floor in Westwood, and they say, we want X amount of energy into the system on this day because we think based on forecasted elements, they have all this data, they go back years. They say, we think we're going to use about this amount of energy. So Eversource buys that energy from the system. It gets into our transmission system, goes into our distribution system. So we have a limited amount of energy we can play around with. And we always get a little bit more than we expect because sometimes people want to run a number of different systems at the same time. In that July, everybody was turning everything on, and it didn't turn off. It just kept going. So not only were we exceeding the load that we expected within Eversource, but regionally it exceeded. And so in that case, we saw a level 4. So we have those things happen pretty frequently now with those summer extremes. Type 3s, if you had asked me 3 years ago, I would have said once every 2 years. This has become, I am now writing my 7th final event report. And you only write final event reports for 3 2s or 1s. I'm writing my 7th, and it's been 3 years. So when we talk about climate change and the impacts to the system and how much damage is occurring, how many outages are occurring because of these extremes, it is coming. And we are expecting that the heat factor is going to be a major change for us moving forward. I hope that answered your question. That was a long answer for your question, but I love that. Any other questions on this before I transition to fire police standby calls and restoration priorities? Okay. Restoration priorities. This is not a hard and fast rule, and I want to emphasize that. There are certain things that we have to absolutely have hard and fast. FPS 1, fire police standby 1. This is probably the most challenging thing to explain between the FPS 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to talk about that in just the next few slides. But if we have something that's involving a life-threatening or imminent danger event, that's always number 1, life safety. For the fire department, life safety, incident stabilization, property conservation, that's basically the same idea that we have here. We want to restore the transmission system next. Reason why, if we can't get energy in, there's no way we can solve the problem. Great example of this, New Hampshire in January. We did incredible work to restore all the lines going from Vermont into New Hampshire, right? Right on the border. We had all this great restoration work, but none of the power could come back on because a transmission line belonging to another company hadn't been repaired yet. So we could do fantastic, phenomenal work for hours and hours and hours on end, but it wasn't going to change anything. So you got to have the transmission system in line first. And you also have the substations that have to be working, because if you can't take that energy at such high voltage and step it down into a distribution level, then you're not going to be able to do anything with that. So you got to have everything coming in first. We then typically go to a critical facility, and that's what Peter was just talking about. And that I think is really important to understand too. There should be, in many cases, generation that's on site for these communities. So like for facilities, so a fire station, long-term care facility, they should have their own generators, but we always try to prioritize getting them done first. Schools are another big one. So tomorrow, if we have a lot of power outages and they're impacting schools, we actually have a dashboard that shows us all the schools that are out in the state, and we'll prioritize those schools. If we know that they want to open by Wednesday, our operations team will work all night to try and make sure that those schools come on. Last big storm we had, they worked extensively overnight to try and make sure those schools open the next day. We then get the largest number of customers per repair. Now, this is an interesting one. So yes, this is 100% true. We try to get the biggest number of customers back as soon as possible. The other way that we try to think of this, and this has gone more towards an equity standpoint, which I think is pretty interesting. It's not always necessarily the largest numbers, but the largest impact from a socioeconomic standpoint. So if you have a poorer community and there are 200 people out versus a wealthier community with 500 people out, the obvious logical step would be to get 500 people back on, and then we'll deal with the 200. But the impact might be disproportionate to that 200, if that makes sense. Those 200 people, they may not have access to a warming center. They may not have the ability to evacuate their home and go to another location. They may not have the means to have a hotel for the night. Whereas the 500 people in the other community that may have more means and more resources, they may have the ability to do all of those things. So Eversource does take that into account as well as part of the restoration strategy. Then we move into Fire Police Standby 2, which I'm not going to dive too much into because we're going to talk about it, and Fire Police Standby 3. All right, so what is this Fire Police Standby thing that I keep talking about? So basically, it's when a fire department or police department or a designated individual point of contact that Peter was mentioning before says, hey, you know, we have a blocked road, we have a life-threatening event, we have wires down in the roadway. Prior to this system, there really wasn't a good way to classify it consistently. So we just created a system that classifies all of those elements into 3 main buckets. And it allows us to prioritize what resources go to the call and when those resources go. If it's a Fire Police Standby 1, we're almost always sending the closest available resource to resolve that issue. And resolving it might just be cutting power. For a Fire Police Standby 2, we may be able to send the closest available resource, but that might not necessarily be as quick as an FPS 1. And not because we're not trying to get them there, but it may be that we have a lot of other priorities going on, so we're going to classify that as the next step as on our list. Then Fire Police Standby 3 calls are the lowest level call. This is a wire down. It's not impeding our first responders from getting to where they need to go. It's not causing an imminent threat or life hazard. So these, we would actually, during an event, we'll send out groups of people called wire guards, and they'll watch them. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But if we don't classify these events appropriately during an ERP event, then we may be sending the wrong resource to support your community, and that's drawing away another resource that could have gone to another community, right, that has an FPS 1. Again, if I'm talking about EMS and fire, right, you don't want a paramedic unit going to a basic life support call when a real advanced life support call comes in and you don't have that resource available. So same logic. So Fire Police Standby 1, this is where our electrical equipment, our utility equipment is preventing our ability to conduct rescue efforts or administer first aid treatment to individuals. Great example of this would be a line over a car. So somebody's trapped. This happens sometimes when people hit a utility pole. Lines come down on top of the vehicle. They can't get out. It's an imminent life threat. We have to get to them. We can shut down that power very quickly by sending the closest available resource that's qualified to do so. Another example is a person trapped in a burning structure, and the emergency personnel need the electrical service disconnected. So I get the question a lot, well, is an FPS 1 valid if I have, you know, for example, in Wayland, they had a big fire along a strip mall, and they wanted the power shut down. So the debate was, is this an FPS 1? Is this an FPS 2? And I was asked the question, what do you think? And I said, I couldn't really tell you, because if it's impeding your firefighters' ability to be safe on the fire ground, maybe you have an argument for fire police standby 1. It's a life threat. But if it's just making it harder for you to put out the fire, it might be an FPS 2, a fire police standby 2. And in that case, we're still going to try and send the closest available resource, right? But maybe the priority level is shunted down just a slightly in order for us to adjust to other fire police standby 1s that are going on at the same time across the state. So not to say that we're not going to send something as quickly as possible, but again, it's just prioritizing the number of calls that come in and when they come in. So fire police standby 1, highest level call during an ERP event. As Peter talked about, there was an org chart here, and it goes much, much deeper. I would know I have to update it every week. The public safety section, they're the ones who are responsible to handle a fire police standby 1 and a fire police standby 2. So they'll typically send out what's called a troubleshooter. And that person will come out. They're qualified to disconnect the power really quick and address any other immediate concerns that you have in that situation. Okay, fire police standby 2. So the best way to distinguish between these two is usually fire police standby 1 is that life-threatening event. Fire police standby 2 is we have a large tree that's blocking the road fully, and our fire apparatus, our ambulances, our police cars, they can't get around it. They can't access an emergency call. That's a fire police standby 2. It's hindering our ability to conduct emergency operations. So any of our equipment is fully blocking the road and preventing emergency personnel from passing. That's key. Our equipment is doing that. That's important for us to remember. An emergency personnel requested that electrical service be disconnected before they can extinguish a structure fire. So that's that Wayland example, which may fit more into an FPS 2 depending on the situation. And then emergency personnel requesting that electrical service be disconnected to enter a flooded home or area of town. So that's where an FPS 2 falls into place. Public safety section during an emergency event is still handling that. During a blue sky, what we call blue sky or today, we would have what's called RSO troubleshooters. These are folks who are always going around. They're all in different area work centers, and they pop out. They'll disconnect the fuse. They'll do whatever they have to do in the field to disconnect power in order for us to conduct operations. Sometimes they can actually do some of this remotely as well. And lastly, fire police standby 3. This is non-life threatening. This is like an electrical wire on a sidewalk. Something that's partially blocking the road, but it's not impeding anybody from getting to where they need to go. What we'll do during an ERP event is we'll have a wire guard branch. So these are people who are designated, as Peter mentioned, everybody has an emergency role. They are designated to go out in an Eversource vehicle with their personal protective equipment, and they stand guard of that wire until it is declared safe and crews are on site to fix the issue. So we have people who, that's literally what they do. So it could be a tree limb arcing on the wire equipment partially blocking the road, pole being struck and personnel on scene unsure of the pole's integrity, pad mounted transformer pushed off of its base and wires are exposed. Those are all examples of an FPS 3. During blue sky events, during a day like today, there really isn't a wire guard group to come out here, but again, they'll typically send out a troubleshooter to address the issue. So that's typically what we're looking at. One other thing I was going to say about fire police standby 3, but it'll come to me. So as I said, the public safety section, they're the ones who are responsible for addressing the FPS 1 and FPS 2. They have forestry crews, public safety crews, and they're all brought together to address all of these major issues. So they can open major roadways that are blocked by Eversource equipment. They can address any of the public safety hazards that is caused by our equipment. All right, so I was going to warn you in the beginning, we have a quiz. All right, I know, I should have said it before because everybody had coffee today, right? All right. So fire chief call. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you a bunch of examples and you're going to tell me, you can just shout it out loud as you can so everybody out there can hear that we're having a lot of fun today, what the FPS level is. All right, so we have a fire chief calling in that there was a transformer on fire on the side of the road. What do we think? 1, 2, or 3? 2. I heard a 2. I heard a 3. 2. Okay, let's see what we FPS 3, right? Police chief calls in that there is a wire down across the road and the road is blocked. 2, awesome. We have a fire chief calling in that there's a wire down across an SUV with a family trapped inside. All right. Police chief reports there is a service wire down to a home and the wire is also blocking part of the road. This is a tricky one. Nope, that one didn't give the answer. There, 3. So the key there is that it's blocking part of the road. So if it was fully blocking the road, then we have an FPS 2. DPW director reports there's a massive tree blocking the road with wires down. Emergency vehicles cannot pass through. 2. Fire chief calls in that there is a wire down on a home and the home is on fire with people trapped inside. Police chief calls in that there is a wire down on the sidewalk and is burning. We had to throw some zingers in there. I got a 2. I got a 3. Okay. 3. So again, the big difference is it's not impeding our emergency services, and that's really what this is all about. It's making sure our public services, our public safety services can get to where they need to go. And that's what I meant to say. The FPS 3, wire down. The big key thing about that is we don't want fire apparatus and police cars tied up standing by a downed wire. Babysitting a wire is nobody's business, right? We don't want you dealing with that. That's why we have the wire guard teams. You got more important things to do. But in any case, that's the point there, is it's on the sidewalk. It's not impeding emergency services, not presenting an immediate life threat. And then last, the fire chief calls in that there's a tree on a wire and the tree is on fire. 3. All right. And with that, I will leave you here. Any questions before I step down? Or okay.
I just wanted to add,
Yeah.
Peter and I have talked. That's great on paper and everything, but when you're at a call, those 2s and 3s can actually go to a 1.
Yeah.
So that can get confusing sometimes, I think between police, fire, and Eversource. So that's kind of what we're trying to come to an understanding about. Can we change? Like when we go to a fire, we go to a working fire, we strike a second alarm, things always change. So it's always not a 3, it's always not a 2. So I just think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? And I think that's good that you guys are having that conversation, because having called in my fair share of FPS 2s and seeing how they adjust from time to time, that's a really important key aspect. So thank you.
Thanks, Craig. The brief overview of the municipal hub. This is the key tool that municipalities, as well as the community relations specialists, as well as the liaisons, utilize to efficiently communicate with the communities to address your priorities. It's password protected specifically for municipalities, police chiefs, fire chiefs, EMDs, a lot of dispatchers, whether it's local dispatchers or regional dispatchers, utilize municipal hub. We strongly encourage utilizing the municipal hub to enter FPS 2s and 3s. The municipal hub, it lists your police, fire, standby calls, FPS 1, 2s, and 3s. You can only utilize it to enter 2s and 3s. FPS 1s, those true life safety events, those have to be called into the designated phone lines. Regarding FPS 2s and 3s, those can also be called into a designated phone line that we provide municipalities. But again, we strongly encourage municipalities to utilize municipal hub to enter the FPS 2s and 3s whenever possible. Regardless if it gets called into the municipal hub or you call it in, all that information will populate in the municipal hub, so you can track those FPS events, 1, 2s, and 3s, the status of those events, and when they've been completed and the events are mitigated. Just some key tables. Again, the FPS events, it lists all the critical facilities and critical customers. You can also report outages. And in the municipal hub, you can assign up to 3 priorities per day. And it has a detailed outage map. I don't know if you've ever gone to the public Eversource outage map. You actually zoom down onto the streets, whatnot. That goes down to the 100-foot level. Municipal hub for municipalities goes down to the 50-foot level. These are just the different roles that we authorize folks to have. Tier 1, that's typically going to be a police chief, fire chief, EMD, a single point of contact. You can enter FPS 2 and 3 tickets. You can report critical facilities that are out. You can prioritize up to 3 priorities per day for an ERP event. Again, it has an enhanced map. You'll see the critical customers, the critical facilities, the outages, not just your town, the region as well. It has the FPS public safety dashboard. Again, that lists all your FPS 1, 2s, and 3s. And as a tier 1, you can create a new town critical facility request. So let's say you have a new police department that just went online. You're starting to use it. This is where you go into the municipal hub. You put the police department address as a critical facility. Peter Bowen would see that critical facility request. Peter would review that with the liaison officer. Within 1 to 2 weeks, it would populate in the municipal hub. Tier 2, we have a lot of tier 2 users. Those are dispatchers, again, whether the local dispatcher, police fire dispatcher, or regional dispatcher, or regional dispatch center. Dispatchers can enter FPS 2 and 3 tickets. They can report, they can see the critical facilities that are out. They have the enhanced map. They can see the critical customers, the critical facilities, the outages, the FPS dashboard. One thing they cannot do is create new town critical facilities. That has to be done by the single point of contact. Tier 3, we don't have a lot, but every now and then we'll have somebody like a first selectman, maybe a mayor, just wants to have an idea of what's going on in town. They can't enter any FPS 2 and 3 tickets, but they can see the enhanced map. They can see critical facility legends that are out, as well as the FPS dashboard. They can see all the blocked roads, FPS 1, 2s, and 3s in the particular community. This is just an example of the special conditions. You'll see here that the Manchester Hospital, this is where you'll actually list the particular critical facility, the event status for that particular location. Let's say, for example, the single point of contact, hey, the power just went out there. They can actually click on report the outage. The next one you'll see is crew evaluating work in progress. Sometimes you'll see it's been assigned ASN. Maybe the crews are en route. Maybe they're actually on scene. From municipality perspective, that's always good when you see ONS. That means they're actually on scene working that event. And at some point, it'll once the power is restored, it'll clear out. It'll no longer show that critical facility as without power. One more thing regarding the municipal hub. It also lists all your FPS events. So your FPS 1, 2s, and 3s. It gives you the address of the particular FPS event, gives you the status. And once that FPS event, again, whether it's a 1, 2, and 3, has been mitigated, it's no longer a safety issue. We've gone out, we've done what we have to do as far as deactivating the power, whatnot. That event will now stay in the municipal hub for 48 hours from the time it's actually been completed. So as a municipal official, police, fire chief, EMD, dispatcher, if you want to go in and say, you know, we had a blocked road on Main Street by Cross Street, has that been taken care of? You can actually go into the municipal hub in 48 hours from the time it's actually completed. That information will stay. It'll give you the date and time that event was actually completed. That was a result of requests from municipalities. We're always trying to make improvements to the municipal hub. That was one of the requests from the municipalities and chiefs. Hey, can we have that information stay in the municipal hub for a certain period of time? About 2 months ago, we finally implemented that. So that information regarding completed FPS events will stay in the municipal hub for 48 hours. And at any time in the municipal hub, you can actually export all your FPS or critical facilities that are out to an Excel spreadsheet. Regarding access and training, if you wanted training for other municipal officials, police chiefs, fire chiefs, EMDs, new EMDs, or dispatchers, whatnot, or any of your police fire officials, you coordinate that through Peter Bowman. We much prefer to do in-person training for the municipal hub. Next, if it's convenient, sometimes it's more convenient just to do Teams or Zoom. We can do that too. We do have an online version, which is good, but obviously we prefer to do in-person using Teams. That way we can answer questions as they come up, because more than likely questions do come up during the municipal hub training. Again, it's all password protective. During declared ERP events, Eversource does stand up a dedicated municipal hub team. If any questions comes in, you're having a problem logging in, there's a specific email you can email to those folks. But if at any time you're having a problem with the municipal hub accessing it, by all means, you can always reach out to your community relations specialist, and he can help troubleshoot that as well. At that point, myself, I already want to have an answer to the question. I know we're getting close to 10 o'clock. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, folks.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you very much, Eversource team. Thank you. So do you have any other questions? So yeah, it was a great presentation. Thank you.
One question I did want to know, for life support customers, it seems like, a physician would have to submit documentation to Eversource directly. Okay.
You won't get that. It basically goes to a specific app, just saying that they have, typically like oxygenated.
Oxygen, yeah.
We had one person that had to get like a full dialysis. Medical that they need electricity for. They just have to certify it, and that's certification. So I can specify how long it is, sometimes it's short term. It's up for 1 year, and after 1 year, the doctor, prior to the end of the year, the doctor would have to recertify again. And work with the license. Their patients have to work with them, request that. The community license specialist can get that, just a short brief letter from your physician, whoever's going, that's specific address. That's how they get it. Takes a couple weeks to get it.
The website and,
You can get that for you.
Yeah, but I mean, the person working with the physician privately saying you can't really have lots. You know, writes the letter and then it goes to the flat, you know, assistant. Always. And make sure you work. Burning out. Press. On top of it.
So sorry, there's something I already got, we're the 10 o'clock, 9 people. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you.